Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show, going out live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. My name is Mark Devlin, and I'm the host of Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist show. I'm very glad to have you with us here tonight, and I'm also here with my co-hosts, Mary Devlin and David Griffiths.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone.
What will we be looking at today, David?
Today, I will be looking at yet another big nationalist lie.
Okay, and I'll be taking a look at the chaos that's being caused by the bottle deposit return scheme.
Okay, and I'll be talking about what's happening with the three First Minister candidates, Dopey, Ropey, and No-hopey.
And, of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
And I will be doing the comments as usual tonight, so please, if you can try to keep them quite short, and I'll put as many up on the screen as I can. Thank you.
Right, so we'll be back in a minute just after the titles, which we forgot to do last week, so here they go. Right, well, welcome back to the Majority Show. Thanks for coming on to see us tonight. Thank you for all your welcome messages. I see they're coming in there from all over the place. I saw Orkney a minute ago and some other places as well.
We have Ron, who's in the Costa del Sol.
Wow,
lucky Ron.
Well, lucky him.
Thanks for watching, Ron.
Okay, thank you very much for watching. Huge thanks to, before we start, huge thanks to our friends at the UK Union Voice and United Against Separation for hosting the show on their Facebook pages, where many of you are watching tonight. We're just going to get straight into the show. We used to do a big intro section. We don't do that anymore. So, well, now we know the answer to what happens when three clown cars crash into each other. We have seen this SNP leadership campaign, which is alternately bizarre, appalling, a tragedy, and a comedy. And over this week, we have seen the candidates settle into their different roles. We have Humza Yousaf, who basically seems to be the Sturgeon continuity candidate, Sturgeon light, if you will. Then we've got Kate Forbes, the competent candidate, although she's anything but, and Ash Regan is a bampot. So, as Henry Kissinger said, can't they all lose? But they will, because each splits the party. David, just some initial thoughts on that.
Indeed, whichever way the result falls, the SNP is going to be immeasurably weakened by choosing any one of these candidates. As you said, Ash Regan's just there for the idiots, unfortunately. Kate Forbes will split the party unquestionably if she wins, because of her outspoken views on those rather controversial subjects. And of course, Humza will split the party if he wins, because as everybody with half a brain can see, the man is a complete incompetent. So they're going to be far worse off as a result of the leadership campaign, no matter which one wins, no question.
Well, for a party that's known for grooming children, perhaps Nicola Sturgeon should have groomed her followers,
her
successors, that's the word, in a better way. But it shows really what nationalist centralisation does, puts all the power into a centralised person in the name of Nicola Sturgeon, and when that person goes, everything splits up. As we said last week, like Yugoslavia after Tito. Now, let's talk about Forbes. She started a terrible week when she said in quick order that she would have voted against gay marriage. She didn't think Sturgeon's transgender bill was any good, even though she voted for it. Oh, no, she didn't vote for it, actually. She was away.
She was away.
I knew there was a bit that was strange. Didn't think that people should have kids outside marriage. I thought that gays should be stoned.
Did she actually say that, Mark?
I think I just put that bit in there. All right. Well, a bit like that. And anyway, some people have praised Forbes for her honesty, but as we discussed last week, honesty is maybe perhaps a bit overrated when it comes to politicians. Now, of course, you don't want politicians to be lying all the time. And I mean, certainly nationalist MPs have made a good career out of that. But we want politicians to be able to deflect when necessary. I mean, we can all remember Bill Clinton saying that he smoked but didn't inhale.
Yeah.
You know, as a kind of genius.
Sure.
In that, and you can respect that even if you don't necessarily like the politician. You can respect the art of politics, as it were. Anyway, some people but one thing I wanted to address was this idea that how some people are saying, well, how come Humza Yousaf's getting away with the pass because he didn't vote on the marriage equality bill either, right? And I think this is because of stereotypes that we have about the different religions. And I think we expect Muslims, especially practicing ones, to be socially conservative.
Yeah.
So when Humza indicates that he is he supports marriage equality, then he's seen as being extra progressive. He's a progressive Muslim. And they're, let's say, the feeling is that they're fairly rare. And that was a good look for Sturgeon's SNP. However, when Christians, who are generally not seen as being socially conservative these days, when they say that they're against gay marriage, then that seems quite regressive. And it's particularly bad that Forbes didn't just say that she would vote for her constituents or the way they wanted, or that she would skip the vote in the way Humza maybe cleverly did. But she actually said her religion would empower her to vote against it. Now imagine that was the other way around. Humza Yousaf said, I'm a Muslim, so therefore I would vote against marriage equality. I think that was quite regressive. So that is, I think, a very bad look for Sturgeon's SNP, of course, which is in disarray now. But that's we've got these two candidates, and one is perhaps, I'm not want to praise Humza particularly, but more politically astute than the other. So I guess in saying that they're both entitled to their religious views, but if they use them as justification for voting, then that's political decision. That's all. Any thoughts on that, Mary? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think what Kate Forbes is saying is that she will put religion, she will put state before church, church before state. And what Humza is trying to say is that he would put state before church. So,
well, it depends. I suppose we're in an age of declining church, especially in the UK, and we would say, well, if someone has their opinions led by their beliefs, then they have to be very careful about how they present those in public. There may be a time and a place to do that, but coming out and saying these things, I don't think in Kate Forbes' case is very politically astute.
I agree. I agree with you, Mark. I think she was very, very naive in saying what she did. And so much so that I don't know if you saw her campaign manager on the day that she spoke in that way. He looked like he had, found a pound and lost a £20 note. He looked shaken to his core. And I understand he's since stepped down as her campaign advisor. No wonder. Where on earth do you go with that? So she's clearly tried to reset since then. And people, we saw her interview last night, John Mackay, saying, what are you apologising for if you believe this? And she just, big smiles. It's ridiculous, really.
It's unusual that we're having this type of discussion, though. I mean, most people in this day and age, most people want to keep their church out of politics, and the insertion of that it's quite unusual, and certainly something that people in the progressive SNP are not used to. So certainly it makes a split in the party. I mean, what is this party anymore? Is it, it's okay, it's Republican on one side, but is it atheist? No. Is it church? Is it what? I mean, what does it? There's all these different pieces that are put together and being held together by Sturgeon, and so and now all these pieces are flying apart.
It's true.
And not just completely exploding. Another thing I wanted to mention a little bit was that some people have been praising Forbes for her competence compared to Humza, and I think this is an error. I'll give you an example of this here. Hold on to find it. Mark competence. So there we go. Right, for example, here we have this Duncan Hothersall here, who is a Labour guy, right? And he says, enjoyed watching Humza on BBC, setting out the argument that the route to a second referendum is to win the argument and show sustained polling for independence. Exactly what I've been saying for years. Oh, wait a minute. We had a referendum already. Why is the Labour person talking about these are the conditions that we should have? And it's this idea that if there was a competent nationalist,
Yep.
that everything would somehow be okay, really. And I just don't understand that. It's like, is Kate Forbes really any better than anyone else? I mean, okay, she's more competent at getting Scotland to be independent, right? Is she
Yep.
really? I mean, let's put the question of her competence aside. Perhaps Mary will jump in that a little bit later. But is that how we're going to judge it? Like, she runs things competently for a while, and then, you know, get some polls that say from Ipsos Mori that are biased, and they say,
Yep.
oh, it's now 60%. So now we're going to turn around and say, oh yeah, that's all right then, because it's been run competently. I don't think so. We're going to break up the UK. We're going to break up the territorial integrity, the social integrity, the military integrity, and, you know, the territory, everything.
Yep.
So we're going to do that just because Kate Forbes can run, you know, a devolved administration a bit better, and Duncan Hotherstall thinks it's fine to get, if they get 60% in the polls. Why 60%?
Exactly.
It's like, why not 70% or 80%? Right?
Yeah.
So they just capitulate. These people are always capitulating to it and saying, oh, but if only they were better nationalists. You're like, no, it's always the same. It's just always nationalism, and their focus is always on separation, right? So,
well, but I don't even know why we're discussing Kate Forbes as being the competent candidate.
Quite.
I mean, Kate Forbes is the person who's been running the finances for some years now in Scotland, and the finances in Scotland are a disgrace.
yeah,
Most of the departments under her people are trying to audit them and they can't be audited because they're not getting the information they need. There's scandals in every single sector, I think. Yep. So how can people think that she's been running things competently?
Well, it's supposed to be
and then
missing
every year,
money, right?
There's missing money everywhere. All the money that came in for COVID, what happened to the money for the taxi drivers, what happened to the money for this, the money for that. There just seems to be scandal. There seem to be financial inquiries going on all over the place. Yep. If she's in charge of, Scotland's finances and people think she's competent, then God help Scotland.
Quite.
Well, that's very true. I think it's a strange argument. Is this that you want the competent person? That we in our side, we want a competent nationalist. It's already, the place is already a disaster. We want to hasten that to some extent. We'll talk about that in a second. So, and I think so before we go in there, I do think that some of this is a kind of middle class idea. Is that Kate Forbes can run things, and she's a nice kind of middle class lady, and she's not like that Ash Regan, who's a bit of a bampot, and not like Humza Yousaf, doesn't know how to do anything. It's like, but the end goal is still the same. She wants to break up the country. If it came to a choice between feeding the poor and a Scottish independence, she would choose Scottish independence.
Every day.
That's the way it goes.
Yep.
That's the way it works. So we want to let's get our priorities right. In that sense,
indeed, I think there are people. I'm noticing some pro-UK people who are saying, "Oh, of course, yes, Kate Forbes is the most competent, and I'm sure she could do a job, and she could lead the SNP." And this is what people like Murdo Fraser are saying. You think, hang on a minute, Duncan Hotherstall's always been just self-absorbed. He was the same 2 years ago during the election campaign when we were trying to say to him, I know you're a Labour activist, but why don't you work with Conservatives to try and keep the SNP out? Oh, you've got no idea what you're talking about. You've never run an election campaign. I have. You haven't. So what? And now he's talking up the SNP, and this is how they should get to independence, as I've always said. Oh, good God. So, I mean, it's just you're hearing from people who just...
like, I've had this daft idea for 20 years, and now the SNP are confirming it. So, it's a great idea. Well, I mean, what kind of logic is that? It's just a bit nuts. Okay, we'll be back in a second. We're going to talk about the other candidates. Right, David, we're going to talk about Miss Regan.
Let's talk about Ash, shall we, guys and girls? Yes, so Regan is basically Alex Salmond in a dress, and who is reading lines given to her by Wings Over Scotland. And that might sound a little bit cruel, but to be honest, it's not really, and it's not even half an exaggeration. Ash is clearly, demonstrably, Wings' favoured candidate, and as Kenny Farquharson, Appeasement-in-Chief, outlined in the Times this week, what Ash has done so far is to obediently parrot Alex Salmond's views on every single subject that she discusses. So, for example, last weekend, she outlined her plans for how to move forward with securing independence, because everyone's saying, how are you going to do it then? She said, okay, I'm not going to have a de facto referendum. What I'm going to have is a VEM, a voter empowerment mechanism, and this will involve gaining 50% plus one in an election and then going and opening discussions with the UK to leave. So it's a de facto referendum then. No, it's not. No, it is. It's exactly that. It's not different in the slightest. So, no, the difference is it's every election. So every time you're going to get this every single election from now on. Well, how about taking the last council elections? We're going to the SNP and the pro-independence parties didn't get anywhere near 50% then. So let's take the last election if you want to. There you go. You've had your referendum. Anyway, so now a blind man could see that the two
don't
things...
indulge them with that nonsense. That's the thing. I mean, they just keep making up these more and more bizarre schemes, and they all come, they're all coming out of Bath, right? That's what it is. It's the font, as it were, of all this nonsense. This is de facto nonsense and the schemes that are coming up. And when you look at Ash Regan, and she's got a wee paper, and she's saying, oh, yeah, de facto referendum. And then they say, well, it was quite amazing, that thing that last week where the interviewer was saying, but it's not going to, how is it going to work? She's going, what if the UK government says no? And she's like, well, they will say yes. And you're like, well, what? You just look at it and thinking, that's daft. Yep. And then Wings Over Scotland, I don't know if I got this somewhere, basically said, all right, they saw that. Is it this one? No, not this one. It's okay, here it is. And basically said, yes, it was a shit reply. We were on it. It was down the bottom there.
We're on it, exactly. Yeah.
We're on it. And then we come into this in a second. The plan
Does that mean that they haven't told her what to say yet?
Well, absolutely. The Wings is winging it, I suppose.
We're deciding what to tell her. Hold on.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the person says. You're saying that on day one, you will immediately negotiate independence, ignores the fact that when the London government says no, go away, when asked, what comes next? She had no reply. And Wings is like, yes, it was a shit reply. We're on it. But there's no reply. This is the thing about it.
Because they have no reply. Indeed, when the answer's no, the answer's no, and that's it. And that's what the Supreme Court judgment showed. If the answer's no, the answer's no, guys. All the stuff about the international community, oh yes, they'll recognise us. They won't. They absolutely won't. Not unless the country from which you're succeeding, or hoping to succeed, recognises the legitimacy of your claim, which it won't. Therefore, the international community will not recognise it. That's an absolute stone-cold fact. And if you disagree with that, you're wrong. It's how simple it is, really. But
the whole thing seems to rely on this international recognition. Is that what you're going to talk about in your thing?
A little bit about that. Yeah,
right. Okay, we'll come back to that later. Then this international recognition. Fine.
It's okay to talk about now. I mean, we'll talk about it later. Indeed, you're right. Yeah, but just to move on. So today, having clarified her huge difference between the de facto referendum and her plan, with its own special acronym, she turned her attention to the tricky Scottish currency question, which has so long been a thorn in the side of independence backers. So, in an interview with Borders TV this very day, Ash was asked, which currency would an independent Scotland use? Have you got the clip there, Mark?
Yeah, here it comes.
Here we go. Good man.
So I think Scotland cannot be credible independently if we're at the mercy of another country's currency and we're not able to control that. So I think we need to be moving to our own currency as soon as it's practical.
But initially you wouldn't be, would you? An independent Scotland would initially have to rely on sterling?
Well, we would, but only for a couple of months.
A couple of months?
Yes.
A couple of months? How do you do that?
In conversation with Tim Rideout, that's what he set out to me. So what we would do, if I become the leader, I am going to start working on what steps we can take now while we are not independent in order to build the infrastructure which would let us move to a Scottish currency within months of becoming independent. So you're saying you would set up a central bank before Scotland became independent? Yes.
Does the British Parliament even have powers to do that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to look to see what steps we can take under the devolution settlement. But I am very clear we would need to get that infrastructure in as soon as possible.
This is a person who clearly has no idea what's involved in something.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's
Indeed.
a person, I think, who doesn't actually have any idea what they're talking about themselves.
Yes.
It's very clear to me that Ash Regan doesn't actually have any of her own ideas. She's not driving it forward on an intellectual level or a political level. I know she's not.
That's an understatement.
But what you expect is someone to come up and say, right, this is my idea.
Yep.
This is how we're going to do it, and this is the way we're going to go forward.
Exactly.
Right? And we're going to do it this way. But none of that rings true with her. What it sounds like is here's something I was given in a bit paper about 5 minutes ago,
That's
and
it.
here's something I had a conversation with someone for 15 minutes, and that's now the policy.
Yep.
That's what it feels like. There's no conviction behind it at all.
I think everyone would agree with that.
Yes.
I think she very
Indeed.
much sounds like she's just been told that, we'll set up a central bank. She has absolutely no idea what's involved in setting up a central bank. She thinks she can set it up in a couple of weeks and it'll all be running.
Indeed. I'll talk a little bit more about Ash Regan's delivery when we come to Zoomer of the Week, which isn't her. But anyway, I will talk about her. But as you can see there, even the interviewer is totally incredulous, even 2 months. And all serious, if you're saying you're going to keep this currency for a couple of months, you might as well say we're going to keep it for 2 or 3 hours, because either one is as ridiculous as the other. You cannot keep a currency for 2 months. You can't do that, guys. Believe me, okay? So can we just stop being silly? But Stephen Daisley actually said earlier this week, he has seen politicians in the past coming up with plans on the hoof and in a hurry, but he's never before seen a politician making up her plans literally as she's being interviewed, which is what I should think.
That's really what it feels like. And then going back and going to Wings and saying, or whoever it is, Wings is on the phone saying, that was shit, you better say this instead. And then she goes back out again. And then it's just another disaster because there's no way forward with this nonsense. It's just utter nonsense. She moved on to the 65 countries, which we'll talk about, 55.
We will indeed talk about that, yeah.
And it's just utter nonsense. It goes on, and it's as if they've not thought through it. Now, I know this sounds a bit strange, but I do think that if you have a plan for to do something as important as Scottish independence, that you might have thought it through, and you're not just completely winging it the whole time. So this just looks like exactly like that.
Do you think each of them, if they've been in the party for some time, they would have thought through these points before now?
Yeah, but I think perhaps they're perhaps someone actually mentioned just the other day that perhaps they're in a bubble. They've always been brought up inside the SNP where no dissent is allowed, and they're talking to themselves and their advisors all the time, but they're never very rarely let out to deal with the public. Nicola Sturgeon used to do. Even Humza used to have press conferences, right? So they're not being let out in public before, and so they
must talk among themselves.
Yeah, but they're not talking to journalists, and journalists are going, well, I mean, it's great. They can go, yeah, you know what we'll do? We'll go up and we'll march outside the UN with saltires and blue painted faces, and that's going to work. And they talk amongst themselves and go, yeah, that's a great idea. But of course, when that comes out to reality,
when Ash brings up, when she says, I think we can create a central bank in a couple of months, and nobody says, oh, don't be daft, Ash. No,
they don't, because they're all in the bubble. That's the thing. They're all in their bubble, and they just think that, okay, what's the next thing that keeps it going?
Yeah, I've got a theory.
That's really the level.
You're right, Mark. I mean, it's something I've noticed also. I'll come back later to why I think they're doing this. But I mean, just to finish off talking about Ash for the moment, it's clear she's the make weight in the contest. You can see that. I mean, nobody just genuinely thinks she's going to win. She hasn't got the endorsement of a single minister, either in Holyrood or Westminster. She does have Joanna Cherry's endorsement, but Joanna Cherry is, of course, no longer on the front bench. But what's even worse than not having anybody's endorsement is that Ash has got the endorsement of Craig Murray, conspiracy theorist extraordinaire. So bad luck there, Ash. Never mind. But I mean, she's not going to win. She knows she's not going to win. We all know that she knows she's not going to win. And it's just becoming a little bit embarrassing to watch. So later on, I'll talk a little bit more because it's quite an interesting area to discuss this. Just the way that she is in interviews and why I think that might be. But if you want to go on and talking about competence, let's talk about Humza for a minute. And I think what we can say about Humza and his campaign so far is you can sum it up in one sentence. He is clearly the continuity candidate. We can see that. He's clearly the choice of Morell, Sturgeon and everybody because they think he'll carry on with this woke agenda of theirs. And he is being shielded from exposure by his handlers as they know if they don't, then he'll soon reveal himself as the most clueless candidate of the three as soon as he opens his mouth. And I think
I don't entirely agree with that. I actually think he's an okay speaker. And I think he's fine in that, but I think they all have the problem that there's nothing to back up. There's no there, as the expression goes. There's nothing. You can talk, and maybe Humza is best at getting, obfuscating and deflecting, because he's been in positions where he's had to do that.
Sure.
That's what we've trained him to do after all this period of time. All that failure and all that disasters means that you have to be, thick-skinned and be able to deflect. So I think he's able to do that to some extent. But the problem now is that the press is like, it's open season.
Yep.
They're just like, well, okay, well, how are you going to get independence then?
Absolutely.
And then some kind of daft scheme comes out, or it's like a wait. And then that's just as bad, because the nationalists, of course they don't want to wait. That's not what they want to do. No more kicking the can down the road.
Absolutely.
Certainly. Now, we were looking around and we saw that Wings of Scotland like to go over there every so often and see what the nationalists are thinking. And it turns out that they think that we think that Forbes should be the one. Where is the thing? Forbes should be the one.
So they're thinking that we're thinking. Okay.
Yeah, they're thinking that we're thinking. Here we go.
But we're not thinking.
No. It's all like a bit of a bluff here. Shape of the SNP leadership already pretty clear. If you're a unionist, you want Cape Forbes, relatively competent, no history of interest in India, no plan for it. If you're a yeser, ask Regan, only one with a plan. Okay.
Yeah,
if you're an effing idiot, Humza Yousaf. And then this person says, no, the unionists want Humza because he will completely destroy the SNP and Yes movement, returning them to where they belong. Been very well said there, hugging and munning. And Wings says, yes, but they don't want to live in the catastrophic bin fire of a Scotland he'd oversee. Forbes is no threat to the union, but also won't trash the whole country with her incompetent boobery. Look, the place already is a bin fire.
Right.
This is the thing. It's already a bin fire, and we would rather have some extra flames going and the whole thing going down in flames, like a combination of a meteor strike that killed the dinosaurs, the 747 crash, a pile up on the motorway. We want all that. That's what we want. We want the whole thing to fail completely, and Humza should be the candidate because he keeps the gender bill in front of the public for the next year.
Yep.
He actually wants to fight the UK government over it, over Section 35. And so that's, as I said, it's going to go on for the year, and he's going to lose.
Yep.
And public opinion's completely against it. Then he's going to keep the Greens in power, or he has to fire them. That's a great choice. Yeah, I'm keeping them on for now. And then if something really crazy goes, then I have to fire them. Bad headlines either way. Loopy Lorna and wee Paddy Harvey keeps their extremist policies in play. And then by being the continuity candidate, he keeps Sturgeon in everybody's minds. Not to mention the daily incompetence that he may be able to charm around, but ultimately it's a bin fire. So
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, your point is right. He is a passably good speaker. He's all right. I don't think he'll acquit himself well in a debate. I don't think he will. And I think that's one of the reasons why they tried to keep the debates secret to start with. And then there was such a storm of protest that they've allowed to let one camera in. So, for example, tonight's event in Cumbernauld is going to be broadcast on STV News, whatever it is a channel. I don't know if there is an STV News channel, or on their YouTube, or maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so it's going to be broadcast after a fashion, but no, I think they are a little afraid of how he will shape up.
I mean, any one of them is a disaster, but certainly we talked about competence earlier. Competence is a red herring, and Ash Regan is a bampot. So basically, I'm for Humza, even if it is a disaster, because it will kill Scottish nationalism with any luck for decades. We'll be back in a second where we're going to be talking about another bin fire in an actual bin, this time in Lorna Slater's recycle bin.
Brilliant.
So we'll see you in a second. Right, Mary, you're up.
Thank you. Well, I know we've all been reading a lot about this DRS. So what is DRS? Well, on August 16th, Scotland is aiming to be the first part of the UK to introduce a deposit return scheme for single-use drinks containers. This means that a 20p deposit will be added to all of our single-use drinks containers, whether they're made of plastic, metal or glass, for alcoholic and soft drinks. Then, after you've bought, whatever it is you buy, the consumer gets their money back by returning the container to retailers and hospitality premises that sell these kind of things. And it'll all be run by a company called Circularity Scotland that's been set up. So some of the retailers will accept items over the counter, while larger stores and shopping centres and community hubs, they will probably be using reverse vending machines known as RVMs. A reverse vending machine, of course, is where you put something in and you get money out.
Yeah.
So you will either be paid in cash if you put your bottles and so on over the counter, or you'll get a voucher from an RVM. And then the vouchers can be used to either pay for your shopping, or you can ask for cash instead.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the first question you want to be asking here is why? But anyway, so
it's partly to stop people littering and to improve their recycling rates. Doesn't seem to do any of those, because certainly if you're a litterer, what you're going to do, are you going to say, oh, the convenience of throwing this bottle out the window is going to cost me 20p? Fine, 20p, isn't it?
Or, I mean, you can carry it around with you all. You come across a reverse vending machine, or you can go into a shop and you can queue up and whatever. So what I'm trying to do tonight is to look at this from a few different perspectives.
Yeah.
The first way I'd like to look at it is, what does it mean for consumers? So what's it going to mean for all of us? Well, the first thing that's going to happen, of course, is that 20 pence, at least, because some people are saying 40 pence maybe, is going to be added to the cost of every single drinks can, drinks bottle, whether it's plastic or whether it's glass. So every single one of them. So, for example, if you regularly buy, like, say, 12 bottles of Scottish water that's sold in Aldi, they're selling it there today for like £1.59. That will then cost £3.99.
Good God.
So you will have to collect your bottles and then go and claim back £2.40 of the £3.99. So instead of paying your £1.59, it's going to be £3.99, which is ridiculous. And as I said, you're going to have to be collecting all these bottles and cans, whether it's glass, plastic, or metal. So what we do in our house is we put all of these things into, we have a recycling bin inside the house.
An amazing innovation, the recycle
bin.
It
works. And then we take them, when that gets full, we take it out and we dump it into the big recycling bin that's outside. We live in Glasgow City Council, so we have a blue bin, and that's our recycling bin, and it gets emptied every 2 weeks. And I'm quite happy with that system. But now what we will have to do is we will have to have a much bigger container inside the house. We'll have to put all these things, and you can't be crushing anything. I'll come to that a little bit later. But basically, you have to collect them all in your house, and then you have to get in the car or carry them all or whatever it is, and driving back and forth to your reverse vending machine or to your local retailer to claim your money back. And while you're there, you can wait in a queue, because I'm sure there's going to be hundreds of people doing the same thing.
Oh my God.
And what's part of this scheme is that every single one of these drinks that's made, every single item of these drinks that's made in Scotland, it's going to have a barcode, and it's going to be labelled in a special way with a barcode and tracker on it. So when you try to return your bottle or can or whatever, if it's a bit squashed or, something, they're all on top of each other, they get a bit squished or whatever. If you can't read the barcode, you're not going to get your money back.
But I mean, it's just not worth the bother, is it? I mean,
No,
really,
it's not.
you're going to take, even if you get 5 cans, okay, even if you've got 50 cans, much is that going to be? 50 cans, a lot of cans. £10. It's just not even worth the bottle. It's not even worth the petrol.
£10 might
be. The diesel. But I mean, it's barely worth it, considering you have to keep them in your house, which is a big mess to begin with. Or you keep them maybe you keep them outside in your recycle bin that used to be taken away by the council. And I just don't get that. Like, we get our stuff delivered, our food's delivered, so we don't go to supermarkets that much.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people don't.
In the supermarket, right? So what's the kind of happen? The Tesco guy is going to say to me, "You get any empties, mate?" And you're going to go,
No, they won't be able to. They won't be able to handle the volume. They can't put them in their vans.
That's the thing. They can't do that. So what are we going to do?
So
what's going to happen? We're going to put them all in the thing, and then we're going to be like losing money. We're feeling that we're losing. Well, we've paid for it, right? We've already paid.
Well, I don't know if we'll be able to continue with the show on a Wednesday night, because we'll probably have to. We'll still be at Tesco's or wherever it is, queuing up to get
up to get your £2 back,
to get our
exactly.
barcodes read to get our money back.
For
I mean,
heaven's
it's
sake.
absolute nonsense. And if you try to use a vending machine, you know what it's like when you're at the. I mean, for example, even if anytime I do go to Tesco or Marks and Spencer, I don't like to use the automated,
Tills,
those systems, because it always comes up with messages, and you always have somebody to come over to put their thing in and put a number in and all of that. Can you imagine when everyone's queuing up outside these reverse vending machines, and and it didn't read your barcode properly? It said this one can't be read. What do you do?
Like quite. Yeah.
Are they going to have a person at every single one of these that can put in their number and just say, right, go ahead, on you go?
Yeah,
I mean, it's an absolute disaster waiting to happen. And
here's a comment here. Eddie says it's a good idea to encourage kids to stop littering, and they might even go out and litter pick those items which will help those clean those areas. Make those areas clean. No, that's not what's going to happen. Maybe in some areas, a bunch of junkies will go out and pick up the things, the bottles. But the thing that would actually stop children littering is education in their school, instead of this sex education, whatever it is they're doing. And the other thing that would stop people littering is actual enforced fines. Now, if you look at the side of the road in any place, many roads in Scotland, especially junctions, you see all the bottles at the side of the road. It's going to be much cheaper as a scheme to put cameras on these spots and fine a few people, a couple £100. That will stop it pretty pronto. Right, so that's the thing. Education we used to have when we were young. Remember, keep Britain tidy, all that type of stuff. And instead of what's happening now is that this punishes the people who do recycle, right? We do recycle already. We put it in the recycle bin. That's fine. We do that. We do our social obligations, whatever it is. Whatever happens to after then, we don't really care about it, whether it's recycled or not. But we feel as though we're doing our bit. But the litterers will still litter. They still go, I don't care if they're because they're that type of people.
Yes,
that's the thing. They're that type of people who do that anyway, and the way to stop them is to fine them and to name and shame them and say do that type of stuff, and to educate young kids, keep our country tidy. I mean, you think as nationalists that would be a thing that they would like.
Scotland tidy.
Exactly.
Indeed.
Well, it's not only consumers that are going to be in for a really hard time with this. It's going to happen to businesses as well, because of all the extra costs and the other burdens that are being put on businesses that are already struggling. Yep. So, I mean, first of all, there's the manufacturers. They have to do all the labeling and the barcodes, which are going to be different on, bottles and cans that are going to be sent out to Scottish distributors from the rest of the UK. Ugh. And if they don't comply, they'll be fined for doing that. Yeah, so a lot of manufacturers also might be banned from selling if they haven't registered and gone along with the whole system and what have you. Then they can be banned from selling these types of goods in Scotland. So a lot of the retailers, that's the manufacturers, the retailers, they're worried about their cash flow, because it could take months for them to get the money back. So what if you're a small retailer and you sell some cans and bottles and so on, but you just happen to be in a convenient spot where there's like hundreds of people have come in over the last month, and you've got big piles of cans and bottles and what have you, and you've been paying out 20 pence on every single one of these items, then that could make a big dent in your cash flow while you're waiting to get the money back.
Well, it really just seems like a solution in
need of a problem.
Need of a problem. As well. Mary, you have to.
Okay, I'm sure that with all of this, there's going to be a lot of bureaucracy. All these small retailers and manufacturers and everything, there's going to be an awful lot of form filling going on with this. So this is an issue that I'd like to just keep going with. We'll see how it develops, and we'll bring you up to date with the news as it develops.
Well, we have some, of course, as we know, it's run by Loopy Lorna, and it's a disaster. She's up in the Parliament today. See the way she stands up every time. She's like, stand up to attention. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, she's under a lot of pressure from everyone. In fact, people in, first of all, UK government saying that they're going to block it here. And then her, Forbes says that that it's going to cause economic carnage, and there's a whole bunch of people against it. I don't even know is Humza Yousaf for it or not.
Well, Humza Yousaf has said that there would at least need to be a delay of about a year.
Yes, for the small businesses. That's right.
Yeah. So he's talking about a delay. So I mean, this scheme is supposed to go into effect on August 16th, and all three of the SNP leadership contenders are saying one way or another that it's not going to happen.
Yep.
But the businesses are having to comply with it all now and spend
not as many.
As we speak, they are spending millions of pounds.
Yeah, all the burden is on the producers. Right? The producers have to pay for it. So I think it's quite shocking, actually. The government is forcing them to spend money on a scheme that nobody wants, they don't want, we don't want. And who wants it?
It's a huge
the only people who
barrier.
want it are the Greens.
Yep.
And the only reason the Greens are in government is because Nicola Sturgeon needed two ministers and needed their votes to do a referendum bill that failed.
Exactly.
Right? So surely the Scottish SNP should just let them go now and to avoid more damaging headlines. This, Lorna Slater jumping up and trying to defend this nonsense every day. It just is a terrible look. But, please don't do that, actually, because it is a terrible look, and we'd rather the whole thing goes down in flames. Right, Mary, I think there'll be more on that next week, so we can do it. It's an ongoing thing, and going to move on now. In a second, we will be back with the big nationalist lie. Aha, got that back. David.
Very good. Excellent. Good to see it back. Yeah, so for the first time this year, we revisit an old favourite topic, the big nationalist lie. And today's lie is one you will have heard several times since the commencement of the SNP leadership campaign. And that lie is 65 countries have left the United Kingdom and not one of them has held a referendum first. Right, so let's just explore that for a minute. So, as is invariably the case with nationalist claims these days, it's totally untrue. There have never been 65 countries in the United Kingdom for a start, never. Maximum at any one time has been 4, if you want to call them countries. So,
that's quite a good point.
Indeed. Yeah.
Right, are we finished?
quite exactly.
I think that sums it up.
But so just to clarify what they're actually getting at here, what nationalists are trying to do is confuse in people's minds the UK with the British Empire, because since the 18th century, yes, many countries have gained independence from the British Empire, most famously, of course, being the USA, the United States of America, in 1776. Now, among other lesser-known countries are, for example, Afghanistan. I'm not sure how many people realise that. That's one. Bahrain, for example. It's true to say, and it's absolutely true to say, that there has only ever been one occasion, literally once, where a country has left the United Kingdom, and that was almost exactly 100 years ago with the formation of what was then termed the Irish Free State, which was later to become known as the Republic of Ireland. And one important thing to remember here is that of course, this caused the creation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, whereas previously it had been the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Now, it's important to bear in mind that the truth of what happened in Ireland, it's not that Northern Ireland broke away from the rest of Ireland. That didn't happen. What actually happened was the Republic of Ireland chose to break away from the rest of the United Kingdom, of which it was formerly a part. Northern Ireland remained where it had always been, which is part of the United Kingdom, where it had been for the previous 100 and however many years. So that's just the historical fact to bear in mind. Now, as for the other countries which have left the British Empire, you cannot say, for example, Lesotho left the British Empire, which proves that Scotland can be independent of the rest of the United Kingdom. Actually, no, that doesn't follow at all, guys, any more than it follows to say Belize left the British Empire, therefore it follows that Yorkshire or the southeast of England can leave the UK. No, the two situations, the two events, one of which is real and one of which is imaginary, are wholly incomparable. So, Mark, what are your thoughts? Why do you think we're hearing this lie so regularly?
Well, as it's kind of mentioned earlier, this is coming directly from Wings Over Scotland, and it's on the hoof type of answers that they haven't actually thought through. It's like, we'll have a de facto referendum, 50 plus one, not even. We'll have it all the time now, and we will, if that happens, we'll declare independence straight away.
Yep.
And of course, the UK government will say yes. And of course, they'll say yes because 65 or 55, whatever it is, countries have already done so. And you're like, no, that's not the way this is going to work at all. And There seems to be this idea that they'll go for this international recognition. That's what they say. They say, well, under the United Nations Declaration of something or other, point 1.2,
Yep.
then all rights of,
Yeah.
all members, it might be actually, have a right to self-determination, not actually regions in there, but it doesn't apply. I've read quite a bit about this, and that statute or line doesn't actually apply to Scotland, because it's really for places where that don't have self-determination, and that means that they don't have human rights is a big thing. So if you already have human rights, and you already have, just for example, you already had a referendum where 80% of the population took part, and most of them, by large majority, decided to remain in the country, then that's the actual definition of self-determination. We did self-determine, and there's no abuse of human rights coming from Westminster to the UK. Everyone has the same rights in the UK.
That's right.
So they've got nothing that they can go on to go and get this international recognition. And I think it's a bit of a poisoned chalice, because what they might end up with is they get supported by Iran and Russia and maybe China, right? And that is not going to help them. Really, it's not a good look, and they are not countries that are interested in the freedom of the West. Let's put it that way. They're interested in getting their power and tentacles into there that's what they do. So that's not going to. I mean, what do they expect is going to happen? They just don't seem to think it through at all.
Yeah. No, agreed. And to me, I mean, the reason that they're talking about this is, I think it's just further evidence of the fact that they genuinely don't have anything factual to contribute to the debate. We know that they can't come up with a sound economic case for independence, mainly because it doesn't exist. I mean, there is no economic case for Scottish independence, literally none. So all they're doing instead is appealing not for heads, but for hearts and minds, and they're hoping that this sense of grievance, if they keep talking about it and keep talking about issues like the Stone of Destiny, that's another one, that will really get people's emotions going, and that's really all we've got now.
It's a rock.
It's a stone, exactly. So who cares? Absolutely right. So, and it's just, you cannot, as I've said before, you cannot create a new nation state on the basis of a pack of easily dismantled lies. You can't do it. It's impossible. So I genuinely think this is further evidence that Scotland's, as I've said, Scotland's disastrous flirtation with corrosive nationalism is coming to an end. And I do think we're going to see a big drop. Whatever the outcome is of the leadership election, you're going to see a big fall in the SNP's fortune. So let's just hope so, guys.
Well, we can but hope. But certainly there are going to be a lot of people who are politically homeless for a while, when they think this has been what, and they can try and hang their coat, as it were, on competence. If Kate Forbes wins, that only gets you so far. I don't know what they can hang their coat on with Humza Yousaf, really. So we'll see. It's a bit of a disaster. Indeed. Things that you can do it's good section there. Things you can do to support the show. You can make a donation to the majority, and I've got a wee thing here. QR codes. Okay, let's see. Nope, it's the wrong one. Did the wrong one. Support this. Oh, here we go. You can support the show. You can do that with QR code, or you can actually just go to our website. We're doing a donation for fundraising drive for 2023, and anything that you give will be most appreciated. You can, of course, still buy the what's it called? How do I get to do this?
You can buy a t-shirt or a mug, and you can get a discount, 10% discount, if you use the coupon SHOW10.
Right, so we've got some majority t-shirts, and we've still got some Resign Sturgeon t-shirts. We've got to upgrade those to the mission accomplished ones.
Yes.
And of course you can tell your friends about us. We are getting more numbers every week, and that's because we like to have a bit of fun, I think, talking with you out there about the disaster or the bin fire that is Scottish politics, and hopefully one day we may not be necessary, we may not be needed even, because everything's so happy. And
we can all retire.
Nationalism. There will always be issues, I suppose. Coming up, it's the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the Week.
Yay.
Right, David, you're first.
I am indeed. Okay, my Zoomer this week is very much in line with Ash Regan's outburst today. So my Zoomer is convener of the Scottish currency group, Tim Rideout. Now, as we mentioned earlier today, Ash Regan started to flesh out her leadership plans today by tackling the tricky currency question. And as she referenced in her speech, or in her latest appalling interview, she referenced economist Tim Rideout as the guy who'd helped her with her currency plan. So just to remind you, they were going to set up a central bank before Scotland's even independent, which is of course impossible, and that we will only have to use the pound for a couple of months. Now, Tim has been notorious for producing similarly bizarre predictions in which he always gives absurdly short timescales for the transition to a new Scottish currency. He is apparently an economist, Tim Rideout, apparently. But of course, he is also, in addition to his ridiculous predictions, he is also notorious for a rather more serious transgression within the SNP. Not all that long ago, I think it was last year, in a Twitter discussion about Priti Patel, he asked, seemingly thinking that he was being ironic, he said, well, how can we go about sending this person back to Uganda, which is, of course, a racist remark. So as a result, he was banned from the SNP for 6 months, and he had to undergo anti-racism training before he'd even be allowed back into the party. Now he's back giving Ash Regan lines. Now, sadly, his time on the sidelines has done nothing to improve the accuracy of his currency forecast, as you can see today. And as I'm sure many of you noticed, we talked about this earlier, you got Ash Regan sitting there looking completely shell-shocked. She has that diffident expression of someone who is giving another person's opinions. You can see that clearly, can't you? On a topic, as you said, Mark, she clearly has no understanding of currencies or the central bank, none, whatever.
You can even see it in this photo. It's there's something not quite right going on here. I think that's very true. She's Alex Salmond address reading lines from Wings.
That's it, from Wings. It's exactly what she is. So instead of regurgitating Alex Salmond's thoughts, it was Tim Rideout's turn, and of course she's picked the biggest numpty in the whole of the Scottish economic independence economic discussion. So for causing yet more embarrassment to a clearly out of her depth Ash Regan, as much as anything else, as she struggles to produce a single coherent thought of her own on any topic, my Zoomer of the week this week has to be Tim Rideout.
Good one.
Oh, yes, definitely. There are a bunch of chancers.
Yes.
Let's just call them that. A bunch of chancers who are around this movement. And I mean, if this is the quality of their advisors, I mean, sure they can do better, really, than this. But the thing is, they can't actually, because there is no real path forward. They're just scrabbling. And it's basically the person who can grasp the best straws, right? Or out of the packet, right? And say, here, I've managed to grab this straw. Here, you can have it now. And climb up this muddy riverbank and get all muddy while you try and get this straw. And it's just the metaphor is working.
We get the picture. Okay.
Right. Anyway, but that's the thing. A bunch of chancers, people who are just not really. There's no intellectual heft, and there's no conviction,
none whatever.
Definitely not. Okay, good one. Moving on to Mary's coming up.
Okay, well, I'll keep it pretty short this week. I will let the man do the talking for himself. My Zoomer of the week is Angus Robertson for his disgraceful behaviour in the Scottish Parliament today, as he repeatedly refuses to answer the question from Liam Kerr on why he continued to push the bogus offshore wind statistics after officials had already advised him to stop using it.
Right.
Do you have that, Mark?
I guess you want to see it then.
Please.
To ask the Scottish Government for what reason the Constitution Secretary reportedly referred to the statistic that Scotland has 25% of Europe's offshore wind resources at a meeting with European delegates on the 4th of October and in newspaper columns of 17th and 18th of October 2022, in light of an email indicating that officials had advised him that the statistic was inaccurate on the 28th of September 2022.
It's a matter of fact, and I hope not of party political disagreement, that Scotland is exceptionally well endowed with renewable energy potential. As renewable technologies, licensing rounds and completed schemes develop at home and abroad, so does the statistical context. An example of this is last year's ScotWind licensing round, which was the world's largest ever leasing round for floating offshore wind, with developer ambitions at over 17 gigawatts. The statistic
Is
the
that the one
member
they sold
highlights
off?
has been used by both the UK
No,
and the Scottish
leave it.
governments, but is now considered to be overtaken by developments. That's why I am no longer using the statistic.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for completely evading the question that I asked. Cabinet Secretary, I have an FOI that says that he presented this statistic as a fact on the 4th of October to foreign politicians.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. The Scottish and the UK governments are no longer using the statistics that have been overtaken by developments. However, I think it's really important not to inadvertently create the impression that Scotland is not a nation with significant renewable resources. It has immense natural resources.
There is appalling disrespect for this Parliament in the Cabinet Secretary's refusal to answer or even address the question that I have put.
Oh, there you go. Strong words.
So good for Liam Kerr, huh?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is the thing. We talked earlier. I mean, it's about how can you obfuscate and brush it off. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have, politicians have lied. And the thing about this one is that they knew they were lying. That's the thing.
That's the whole point.
Right.
They've been told that this
it's
was
one
not
thing
true.
to not really know the facts, perhaps. I mean, it's still difficult, to get round. But they knew they were. She knew they were lying, and they kept on doing it. And surely it's a breach of some kind of code.
The ministerial code, exactly.
Yeah,
you can't lie. You can't do it if you're a minister. You can't do that. Of course, the presiding officer would be all over it, but she just sits there mutely, doesn't she? She's pathetic.
Yeah,
It
but
really
we have
is
to show them up.
Yep.
Right,
when
okay,
this happens.
moving on.
Very good, Mary.
Let's move mine. Right, well, mine's going to be Kenny Farquharson of the Times. I already saw the article, which is this one here, where he says SNP leadership candidate Ash Regan is just Alex Salmond's sock puppet. Well, the first time I read that, I was like, well, they're all just singing from the wings hymn sheet. So is that really true or not? And then a wee bit later, I read it again. I don't know why I did that, actually. And I noticed this part in it here. Okay, here it goes. Okay. So let's have a look at this. Regan's path to victory is narrow and her chances of succeeding are slim. Having said that, the route is clear. It requires an alliance of die-hard independence fundamentalists, gender skeptics, petrolheads, Europhobes, and those who sided with Salmond against Surgeon in the recent SNP civil war. Those are the bad people. Right?
Yep.
Okay. And then older, grumpier, more socially conservative and more impatient. Her people, that's Ash's people, represent a side of Scottish nationalism kept from public view in recent years. It has little in common with the bright-eyed, environmentalist, cosmopolitan, progressive SNP, which has enjoyed its moment in the sun under Sturgeon. And wait a minute. Sturgeon's toxic and divisive nationalism was bright-eyed, cosmopolitan, and progressive. See, this is the problem with these beard scratchers. They really want to make nationalism work. They don't. They try to hide the reality of it, which is all those other things. Independence, fundamentalists, petrolheads. These people were always in the party, right? All these schisms and factions you're seeing now are always there. But because Nicola Sturgeon had a smart suit, or because they ignored it, and they used her for to say stuff against the UK government and against Brexit and so on, and they'll use Kate Forbes exactly the same way. So mark my words. In less than a week, there'll be an article from Kenny Farquharson or someone in the Times about why Forbes is the magic candidate, praising her honesty and her competence. And these are people who would never say English nationalists was acceptable because of their honesty and competence. Can you imagine that? And so this is what we fight against, this idea that there's a better nationalism. There isn't a better nationalism. Isn't 14 years enough, Kenny? 14 years of disaster isn't enough to tell you that whatever it is, whoever's the head of it, it's always a effing disaster.
Right. Well said.
That's that. Who's choosing?
I was going to choose this week if it's okay.
Go on.
And I think I'll go with Tim Rideout.
Get in.
Right, okay. Yes, well, it's pretty hopeless, I have to say.
Well, I mean, he's a real Zoomer. He's always a Zoomer.
Oh, completely. Goodness me.
So, but good. Well, it was well done, Mark. You did.
Absolutely.
You did put up a good case. I have to say.
Impassioned.
You were. Yes.
I thought it was quite good.
Yeah.
All right, we're almost out of time. Just stay with us for a minute or so while we close up. What have we got? Is this the right bit?
Where are you
Okay, it doesn't really matter. Okay, David, you can say this bit.
Yeah, okay. So if you can, guys, please go to the donate page and pledge a donation to the majority, because it will be a huge help as we continue to ensure that nationalism and Scotland's awful time under it is coming to an end.
Very good.
And thank you, everyone, for your comments tonight. They're always very good. Thank you.
Right, to leave you with the thought of the week. Some people like to read the Brothers Grimm. Others like to watch Marvel movies. And some like to think that Scotland's going to be independent. Enjoy your fantasy while it lasts. It is coming to an end. I'd like to say good night from me. Thank you all for being with us tonight.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for all the messages and thanks for listening in.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. See you next week.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.